You may have happened across my recent video as to why I think Space Marine 2 had an exodus of its players, and that video got me to notice a couple of things, or at least the comments did. The first of which was a lot of people have incredibly poor sentence comprehension skills. I say that given the strange amount of comments claiming that I hated the game despite explicitly stating otherwise, or saying that I wanted it to become a live service model. It just makes me feel bad about worldwide literacy rates, but I digress. The other thing I noticed was a lot of comparison to the business model of Helldivers 2. Something to the effect of, if it was more in that vein, it would have had better player retention, and to be honest, I agree. Even with my qualms regarding that game's stability and its managerial disasters, game's gotta recognize game. They have managed to maintain a good portion of their player base throughout the trials and tribulation that they've endured, so I figure while we wait for things like Killing Floor, Monster Hunter, etc., we talk about why they could weather those storms, why Helldivers 2 is such a good game. I will be approaching this topic objectively and ignoring my previous consternations to the best of my ability. The first reason this game is so successful, it's the boogeyman of the modern gaming audience, live service models. If you aren't aware, a live service model game is something that will be constantly updated through its lifetime, and that garners some criticism, some reasonable, some not, and that's where we begin. The fact of the matter is, the live service model of gaming is attractive to modern audiences, despite if they say they like it or not. If you precede that term with free-to-play, even more so. Let's take a look at Rivals, for example. Some people hate to admit it, but that's not going to make it any less true. And I don't think it's good practice to demonize live service games specifically because they have the title live service, like so many do. Most people don't know why they dislike the model. They just hate it because someone told them it was bad without explaining why. And in most cases, well, they're actually kind of right. It is bad. However, there's instances where it's a lot more gray as well. The main problem with live service games can almost invariably be directed back to predatory monetization. The cornerstone of all live service games will be some fashion of currency that can be gained via real money. It's how the devs make a profit after the initial sale of the game, so they can keep updating it. It's worth working on. Believe it or not, there are bad ways and good ways to do this. Let's compare and contrast. For our experiment, our test subjects are going to be Helldivers 2 and Apex Legends. I don't care if they aren't similar in gameplay, they don't need to be. These are just the best and worst monetization systems as far as I'm aware, but if there's even worse, feel free to mention and shit on them in the comments. In Apex, you might get some gold schmeckles for free out of a battle pass once a season, and that's about it. You do this over the course of a year, and you might be able to afford a singular low-tier skin if you get it on discount. It's bullshit, it feels horrible, and they don't even pretend like it's not a scam. Any rational individual can look at this system and see that it's a worthless, scammy pile of fuck. Matter of fact, I would rather be caught scratching my balls with the claws of a taxidermized bald eagle in front of the US Embassy. At least that would be a familiar, albeit uncomfortable territory. Now let's look at Helldivers. Sure, they have a schmeckle system, but there's one very important difference. You can earn your schmeckles at a reasonable rate while playing the game normally, and that right there is the problem with 99% of live service games. There's not a fucking chance that you will make an adequate amount of schmeckles to afford what you want in most games, and that's the point. It's a scam. They know if you're given just enough free schmeckles, you will think that your time-restricted goal is within reach. When they say, oops, you're all out of schmeckle earning methods, they can safely assume that you'll spend your own money to bridge that gap. Why can they assume that? Well, it's because they've built an association with cost in your mind already. They are aware that you have been frantically playing every chance you get to catch your rewards in time. So when they ask for the money and you have no other way to get those schmeckles, they expect you to think, you know what, a few dollars wouldn't hurt. After all, look at how much time I've put in. I can't quit now. It's basically casino philosophy, and it fucking sucks. I used to hate every single battle pass or bullshit advent calendar adjacent reward system instantly upon seeing it because of this. I have since changed my mind. Here is why. When executed properly, It's just another well-structured progression system. Now, I say when executed properly, because there's only like 5 games that do it right. So for the overwhelming majority of circumstances, you are still completely right to hate battle passes and live service models. However, back to my point, Helldivers and Deep Rock Galactic have the best battle pass systems in the entire gaming industry. And I know you might think, well, best battle pass system in gaming, that's like being the nicest guy in prison. What does it get except a shiv in your liver? Well, that's why I likened them more to progression systems, because that's really what they're more like, and honestly, they fucking slap. If you're too busy at the moment, that's completely fine. The content will still be accessible when you return. That's how they feel about it. You progress at your own pace, with no need to mainline the game into your forearm in fear of time constraints. By not embracing overpriced FOMO marketing strategies, they made something worth investing in. Would you look at that? Cool shit can happen when there's no cock-smoking executives breathing down your neck and demanding you milk your players until their titties are chafed. It's as if people are more likely to pay into a system that isn't trying to fuck them in the ass like they're Bill Cosby's dinner guest. Reason 2. Yeah, we're only on reason 2, but the rest go by faster. Procedurally generated maps. If you don't know, that's basically randomly generated maps. If you want your game to have longevity, you better be choosing between that or open world, and I'll tell you why. When it comes to the longevity of a game, there is one department that supersedes them all. Variability. What is different, what is new, and what's going to keep me interested? Some might say stability, but that's wrong. Stability just means your game actually functions. That's not a prerequisite for longevity, it's a prerequisite for your game not being shit to begin with. But back to my point. Once you open up somebody's eyes to the possibility of well-done procedurally generated maps, standard game levels will pale in comparison. Remember, we are talking longevity here. At a certain point, nostalgia often remains the only reason to regularly return to the same exact stomping grounds you were running on before. Third, on the same track of always having new shit, the new shit. 2 parts to this. 1, there is a constant, steady flow of content that's always introducing variables, and 2, it's not just reskins of the same shit. You're actually getting unique equipment. Sure, there's occasionally repeats like the 42 Liberators, but there's also a pissload of other guns, and they come out in big batch updates. They come out with so much content so regularly that most people are currently backlogged, and I know it sounds odd, but if you want your game to survive in the long run, backlogged is actually what you want your players to be. Sure, more stuff needs troubleshooting, but it also means that people are going to shut the fuck up about the next big content drop because they still have the last 5 to work through, and that just means you've got ample time for fixing all the fuck-ass bugs that show up in your spaghetti code. Sorry, I had to mention bugs at least once. I would be remiss if I didn't. And I believe those are the big 3 reasons this game survives in the way that it does. Everything can be boiled down to constant content and reasonable monetization practices. That's all it takes. That's what these big AAA devs are failing at doing. Well, I shouldn't say developers. It's not the developers, it's the executives that tell the developers what they're allowed to do. Some of you may think I was going to give points to the game's community. Not really. Now, some of you are correct in saying I have a great time playing with my friends. I bet that's completely accurate. But that's indicative of you having good friends, not necessarily anything about the game's community as a whole. Don't get me wrong, most of you are normal, well-adjusted people. It's a good community of space racists, but it's nothing insane. The most vocal of you, however, are basically in an abusive relationship with video games, and I'm talking it goes both ways. Reddit has fucked a lot of you up. Half are outraged, the other half are outraged about that outrage, and the rest of them are just screeching until our ears bleed. Well, actually, all of them are screeching until our ears bleed. It's fine. They'll probably grow out of it someday. Probably. Who am I kidding? Most of them are 40. They're not changing. They're just stuck like this. Credit where it's due, the community is very good at rallying together for a common cause. Whether it's for better or for worse, that's pretty back and forth. For every backtracking forced upon Sony, good, you can also look at the inverse of death threats to developers over nerfs. Bad. So I say the good and bad, all things considered, is just about neutralized, probably leaning more towards good. Semi-related note, I heard the Sony executives got fired a few weeks back, so that's cool. Could be wrong though, so don't quote me on it. Anyway, that's all for me this time around, and for those of you familiar with me, you know I've had a tumultuous relationship with Helldivers. It's my gaming equivalent of a mentally ill red-headed girlfriend. I spent months defending it to no end, I died on the hill, I rose up 3 days later just to look upon it with disappointment. The only person I know who has played more than me currently has 17,000 hours in-game, and I'm actually rounding down. So trust me, my decisions were merited in everything that I had said prior, but even with my objections, none of that changes the fact of the matter. The fact is, Helldivers 2 is an example of what I would call the working man's video game. It is meant for 9 to 5 casuals. It is perfect for that. Not only that, but its live service structure should be seen by gamers as the eminently desirable outcome for a live service model. No time-restricted bullshit, and no pressure to throw your hard-earned money into a burn barrel to claim what you've already earned. A system that survives on merit, not the logic of an executive who is nothing more than a scam artist in a suit. Floor's open to you now. Tell me how you feel, tell me why, try to make it concise. If you want teammates in whatever game you play, Helldivers or otherwise, the Discord linked in the description is a good shot. Alright, have a good one.